Forget New Year, New You. This season is about slowing down, locking the doors, and cozying up at home with the one you really want to do nothing with. Your dog. After the holiday chaos, those quiet nights with a blanket, a podcast, and your pup feel like the reset you actually need. Ollie helps make those moments easier with fresh protein-packed meals made from real human-grade ingredients, so your dog can enjoy some quality comfort food too. Choose from 5 recipes and get a personalized plan for your dog's needs. Meals arrive perfectly proportioned with a scoop and storage container, so serving is fast and mess-free. And with Ollie's in-app on-demand health screenings, supporting your dog is easy, ensuring more cuddles for many years to come. Visit ollie.com/truecrime and use code TRUECRIME for 60% off your first box.
It was Sunday, March 31st, 2019. At 3:20 p.m., gunshots rang out at the intersection of Slauson and Crenshaw in South Los Angeles. According to video surveillance of a strip mall parking lot that would later be played in court, one victim could be seen standing, holding his shirt up while he looked to be in pain. Another victim was laying on the ground while someone was desperately performing CPR on him.
At that place and at that time, the world lost Ermias Joseph Ascadon, better known to the world as Nipsey Hussle.
Ermias Joseph Ascadon, also known as Nipsey Hussle, was pronounced dead at 3:55 p.m.
Mr. Ascadon was a father, he was a son, he was a brother, he was a successful artist, an entrepreneur, he was beloved in his neighborhood, he was respected, and he was just 33 years old.
Nipsey Hussle was a rapper originally from South Los Angeles, from the very area in which he died. But not only was he known for a 14-year music career, he was also an entrepreneur and an activist, someone who came from a very rough background, but who had high aspirations and influence to help others escape theirs. After he was shot to death in March 2019, the mayor of Los Angeles, along with the chief of the LAPD, held a press conference telling the public what a loss they had suffered with Nipsey's untimely death.
Nipsey Hussle was an artist who touched our city and the lives far beyond the city of angels throughout this country and this world. He was somebody who was a gifted and brilliant artist, an entrepreneur who found global success, who was working closely with this city to help save lives and transform lives, even as he was doing that for himself. He was a tireless advocate for the young people of this city and of this world, to lift them up with the possibility of not being imprisoned by where you come from or past mistakes, but the possibility of what comes in the future. And his impact on our city was deep.
It was senseless. One man would now be largely mourned, and 2 other men were also shot that day, surviving, but with lasting damage. This is the story of what happened to Nipsey Hussle on that fateful day in March 2019, and what would happen to the person responsible. This is Jillian, and in partnership with Law and Crime, you are listening to Court Junkie, episode 232. 32-year-old Brianita Nicholson was working part-time as a caregiver and part-time as a Lyft driver. On February 25th, 2019, she picked up someone who had requested a ride. Through the app, it showed his name was Bobby. The man got in the car, and as she drove, they talked. She found out his name wasn't really Bobby, but Eric. They exchanged numbers. They soon started hanging out regularly.
She was quite busy working 2 jobs, but she found time about every other day to spend time with him. And they hang out, they go to eat, they drive around, just normal activities.
But although they were hanging out a lot, the relationship wasn't really a romantic one. They had been intimate a couple of times, but it was kind of cold, according to court testimony. On March 31st, 2019, they had been hanging out for about 5 weeks. She worked in the morning, and when she was done, She and Eric got together and drove to South Los Angeles. She wanted to go to a swap meet, and he said he wanted to get something to eat. That landed them at the corner of Slauson and Crenshaw. Eric told her to pull into the strip mall, saying he wanted to get some food. The parking lot was busy. As they turned into it, she drove past a group of men who were standing around and talking. She recognized one of them. "Ooh, there goes Nipsey. He fine," she said. "I want to take a picture with him." Brianita was a fan of Nipsey Hussle's music, and she was excited to see him there. She had no idea he owned many of the businesses in that strip mall, including a clothing store. Eric didn't say anything. There weren't any parking spots available, so she pulled the car over next to a fence. Eric got out and walked directly to a place called Master Burger. A few minutes later, she saw him come out, but then walk over to where Nipsey and the other men were standing. Thinking that he was going over there to get a picture with Nipsey, she jumped out of her car and ran over there too. "I just thought he was trying to beat me to go see him before I saw him," she would later testify. As she approached the men, she noticed that Eric was talking to Nipsey and his voice was raised, but it wasn't seeming aggressive. She recalled him saying, "Did you tell somebody I snitched?" Nipsey noticed her standing there and asked her if she wanted a pic. She said yes. He walked over and took a photo with her. Meanwhile, Eric was still talking. After a few minutes, he left and went back into the burger place. Brianita hurried over to her car to post the photo she and Nipsey had just taken on Facebook. "I was just excited. I was just happy. I wanted to show my Facebook friends," she would later tell a court. Eric came back to the car and told her to drive around the block. As they were coming back towards the strip mall, she saw that he was holding a handgun. "What are you doing?" she asked him. She told him he wasn't going to be shooting anything from her car. He laughed it off and put the gun away, telling her to drive to the alley in the back of the strip mall. She parked and he started eating his food. At some point, he told her he would be right back and to wait right there for him. She thought he was going to buy a shirt from Nipsey's store or something like that. But she soon heard gunshots.
And the news that we have to share this morning is that the hardworking men of the Los Angeles Police Department, together with the strong relationships we have within the community, have identified the person believed to be responsible for this devastating crime. He is 29-year-old Eric Holder.
Eric Garcetti, mayor of Los Angeles, and the LAPD hosted a news conference on April 2nd, 2019, announcing their search for suspect Eric Holder Jr. in the murder of Nipsey Hussle. LAPD Chief Michael Moore also spoke.
Following our investigative efforts, we are currently working with the District Attorney's Office to seek the necessary information to obtain a warrant for his arrest. But we believe with probable cause and degree of certainty that on Sunday at about 3:20 in the afternoon, Nipsey with two other males were standing in front of his store, as has been reported. That Mr. Holder walked up on multiple occasions and engaged in a conversation with Nipsey and the others that were there. He left and then came back and subsequently came back armed with a handgun and purposely and repeatedly fired, striking and killing Nipsey Hussle, as well as striking and injuring the other two. One requiring them to be hospitalized or transported to a nearby hospital, the other suffering a wound but was treated at scene.
He said Eric had been identified through video evidence and statements from the community. Later that day, Eric was arrested without incident in Bellflower. He was charged with first-degree premeditated murder. Meanwhile, a huge memorial was held at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. Nipsey Hussle's celebration of life brought thousands of people to the stadium. Snoop Dogg was one of the speakers, along with Nipsey's longtime partner, actress Lauren London.
His soul was majestic. He was the strongest man that I ever knew, a gentle father, a patient leader, a divine light. He was brilliant. He researched everything, completely self-taught, constantly seeking knowledge. He would go to bed and listen to these audiobooks in his headphones, and I would tease him, but that really is what I thought was the coolest ever about him. And he would wake up in the morning and play music for the kids and light a sage and burn it around the house and just make sure that our energy going outside would be uplifted and that we could handle the day. My pain is for my 2-year-old that probably won't remember how much his dad loved him.
Eric Holder Jr.'s trial started in June 2022. He was facing 1 count of murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, and 1 count of possession of a firearm by a felon. If convicted, he could face up to life in prison. In his opening statements, Deputy District Attorney John McKinney drew comparisons between Nipsey Hussle and the man who killed him.
The defendant in this case, Mr. Holder, was also an aspiring rapper. Not nearly as successful, not nearly as respected. And the two men really didn't have a lot in common. There were two men whose arcs in life were bending in different directions.
One thing they did have in common, McKinney said, was their roots, having both grown up in South Los Angeles. They both grew up in a hard-working neighborhood, but that neighborhood was also home to one of the largest street gangs in Los Angeles County, the Rolling 60s.
As a result of being from that neighborhood and having relationships in that neighborhood, both were recruited into the gang at a fairly young age. As gang members in this particular gang, as is true in most gangs, there's a certain code of conduct, there's certain ethics, there's certain rules, there's a culture. And you're going to learn a little bit about gang culture as it relates to this case and what happened to Hermias Ascadon. One of the things you're going to learn is the concept of respect in gangs. Respect is everything, reputation is everything. It's a different play on respect than you're used to. It's kind of a perverse definition of respect. But it is important to them. A lot of blood has been shed, not only in that gang, but in gangs across the county over this concept of respect. It is very, very real to them. They take it very seriously.
He said it's important to understand that the two men were from the same neighborhood and the same gang because there was a conversation between them minutes before Eric Holder Jr. shot and killed Nipsey Hussle.
And you will hear from at least two different witnesses that conversation had something to do with snitching. Now, I know you're all familiar with the word snitch and the concept of snitching, but you may not be familiar with how volatile that subject is within gang life. If someone is considered, if a gang member is considered a snitch, it's a whole lot different from being considered a snitch by your little brother and your little sister.
He said no gang member wants to be considered a snitch. He told the jury that Nipsey had grown up in that neighborhood, had even had the cops called on him a number of times in that very strip mall. But at some point in life, he got successful enough that he bought the whole property, and he now owned it, as well as most of the businesses there. McKinney conceded that Nipsey used to be engaged in criminal street gang activities.
But as he got older and found music, and it consumed him, his life changed.
McKinney told the jury that whenever Nipsey was in town, he would stop by this strip mall. On this particular Sunday, he arrived at about 2:50 p.m. He sat in his car for a few minutes and then got out. When he got out, he did what he typically does, greeted someone he knew. 30 minutes later, he would be dead, laying on the ground in that same parking lot. McKinney told the jury that according to surveillance cameras that covered the parking lot, Nipsey was leaning up against a car and talking to a man named Kerry Latham and his nephew. A man they called Rimpow was also there. Eric Holder Jr. can be seen walking along the sidewalk in front of the businesses until he gets to where the guys are standing.
And no sooner than he walks between the cars, he pulls out not one but two guns, and he starts shooting. He starts shooting in this very tight, confined space where there are 4 people. And he strikes 3 of the 4 people. Nipsey Hussle struck almost immediately.
One of the shots severed Nipsey's spinal cord. He immediately dropped and was never able to move again. McKinney said Eric fired at least 10 shots that day, possibly 11. 10 shots went into Nipsey's body. Then, he said after Eric finished shooting, he walked over, kicked Nipsey in the head, and ran back towards the alley. He told the jury that the surveillance camera captured it all, including the revolver in Eric's right hand and the black semi-automatic handgun in his left hand. He said Eric was arrested a few days later, wearing the same thing he had been wearing at the time of the shooting, including the bandana, sneakers, belt, and pants.
Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence in this case will clearly show, leave you absolutely no doubt, that Mr. Holder killed Hermes Ascadon and injured Kerry Linton and Sherman Villanueva. There'd be no doubt about that.
When Eric's attorney, public defender Aaron Jansen, gave his opening statements, he told the jury that Eric did indeed shoot and kill Nipsey Hussle. He said a bullet then accidentally hit Kerry Latham and may have grazed the last victim, Sherman Villanueva. He said they can't be sure about Villanueva because he refused medical attention and refused to speak with officers. He said 3 days after the shooting, Eric surrendered himself to Telecare, which is a mental health clinic in the city of Bellflower. It was there where he was arrested. He told the jury that this case isn't about who shot and killed Nipsey Hussle, but about whether he should face murder 1 or manslaughter. He said despite what the prosecution says, there was no premeditation, just a passionate response to being called a snitch.
So the heat of passion in this case relates to snitching, an accusation by Nipsey Hussle that Mr. Eric Holder Jr. was a snitch. Growing up, we all know, we learn at an early age in kindergarten and through our parents not to be a tattletale. Nobody likes a tattletale. In the adult world, we have people who are tattletales or people who we call brown noses or kiss asses. At work, they'll go and tell the boss on other coworkers who violate the rules. In the gang world and in the criminal world, there are images from movies, Scarface, where rats or snitches have gotten their just desserts, so to speak.
He displayed a graphic photo from the movie Scarface, but took it off the screen after an objection from the prosecution. He told the jury this is a case about the heat of passion and that Nipsey had made an accusation that Eric was a snitch.
That so inflamed and enraged Mr. Holder, the evidence will show that without thinking, and a few minutes later, a mere 9 minutes or so later, Mr. Holder returned and shot Mr. Ascadon. He did not have time to cool off. The evidence will show that it was very soon after this accusation was made publicly against him that he was so enraged and triggered by this emotional response that he acted without premeditating. That's what the evidence will show.
He said Eric is also charged with first-degree premeditated attempted murder for the other two victims. But he said there's no evidence that there had ever been anything between them or that they had ever known each other, meaning he shouldn't be charged with that either.
That thought never even entered his mind. There'll be no evidence that they had anything between them, that they didn't even know each other. So based on that, we're going to ask you to keep an open mind, listen to all of the evidence. Don't make up your mind in the beginning. Wait until you hear all of the evidence so that you can make a rational, fair, and just verdict. Wait until you get the jury instructions from the court. And when you get in the back and start deliberating, we're confident that you will come back with a verdict of not guilty of first-degree murder against Mr. Hassledome, and also not guilty for the two attempted murders against Mr. Latham and Mr. Villanueva.
The first witness to testify for the state was Nipsey Hussle's friend, 46-year-old Herman Douglas, also known as Cowboy. He testified that he worked for Nipsey, cleaning the parking lot, doing inventory, overseeing packaging, doing multiple jobs for the businesses Nipsey owned in that area. On March 31st, he said he was doing his normal rounds when Nipsey pulled up into the parking lot. It was around lunchtime. Nipsey got out and was greeted by another friend, Evan Rimpaw McKenzie. He said they stood there talking for about 30 minutes or so. They talked about what was going on with Nipsey's career. He had just shot a video a couple days prior and had just been in the studio. As they talked, a couple people approached wanting autographs. Nipsey signed a few and talked to his fans. Another man soon pulled up. Herman said he knew him as Stupid Cuz, which was a nickname for Eric Holder Jr. He identified Eric as being part of the Rolling 60s, the local gang he used to belong to but no longer does. He said when the car that Eric was in pulled up, Nipsey asked, "Is that Shitty?" Shitty was another nickname for Eric. The car parked and Herman said Eric walked over to them. He was asked about Nipsey's demeanor, and he said he was just being himself, laid back. Nipsey and Eric shook hands, and he recalled Nipsey saying, "Hey man, what's up?" and "Where you been, bro?" Eric said he's been gone. Then he said Nipsey said, "Man, they got some paperwork on you, you know. I haven't read it. Like, you're my bro, you know? Like, you need to take care of that." Now, during the grand jury proceedings, Herman was asked what paperwork means. He agreed that in gang culture, it's a term that usually refers to police reports or court documents. He said that the rumor was that Eric had been in jail and had told on somebody for something. Nipsey told him to be careful because people had some paperwork on him. He said he hadn't read it, but that Eric needed to address it. He testified that Eric's response to Nipsey's warning was to say that people were just hating on him and that he didn't know what they were talking about. He said then Eric asked him if they had heard his new song. He said he was just in the studio recording it. Herman said they told him they hadn't heard it. When asked if anyone in the group then clowned Eric about that, he said he wasn't sure and wasn't really paying attention. He said he believes they shook hands again and that Eric went back into the burger place. He was asked if he ever felt like there was any danger, and he said no. If he had, he would have escorted Nipsey out of the parking lot. He said never in a million years did he ever think Eric would come back and shoot. He said Nipsey was basically looking out for Eric. According to the surveillance video, Eric walked out of Master Burger at 14:04. He walked back over to the group again and appeared to fist bump Rimpaw, who was also standing there with them. He then went back to the white car. Herman said he stayed out there for a couple minutes and then went inside the clothing store to the break room in the back. When he left, it had been Nipsey, Carrie Lathan, Rimpaw, and Shermai Villanueva all still standing there. When he got to the break room and sat down, he heard gunshots. He ran out to the front and saw Nipsey on the ground. He also saw Eric running away towards the alley. He ran over to Nipsey and started rendering first aid. He said he could see that Nipsey had a bullet hole under his arm, and he tried covering it with his hand. He said Nipsey was still breathing, going in and out of consciousness. On cross-examination, Herman denied that Nipsey had ever called Eric a snitch, saying he only referred to paperwork and was letting Eric know he better take care of it. He never used the word snitch, he said. The defense attorney, Aaron Jansen, referred to a recent media interview Herman had given, where he said Nipsey had said to himself, "I wonder how this is going to unfold," when Eric pulled up into the parking lot. He pointed out that Herman hadn't said that under direct when the prosecutor asked what Nipsey had said, nor had he said it in his grand jury testimony. Herman agreed he only said that during his recent interview. Kerry Lathan was one of the victims who was shot that day. He entered the courtroom in a wheelchair. He told the court he was 59 years old. He had once been convicted of murder, but was released in September 2018. He said he met Nipsey in 1994 when Nipsey was a kid. After he got out, Nipsey sent him a care package with new clothes in it. According to reports, it was something Nipsey did often for those getting out of prison. On March 31st, he was standing outside with Nipsey. He was only there for about 10 to 15 minutes when Eric walked up and started shooting. He got shot, but said he didn't recognize himself on the ground on the surveillance video. He also said he didn't know who had driven him there that day. "I don't know nothing. I didn't see nothing," he testified. He was definitely a reluctant witness, saying at one point, "I can't get my thoughts together," and admitting he didn't want to be there. Kerry's nephew, Shermai Villanueva, was the other man who was shot alongside Kerry and Nipsey. He was grazed by a bullet. He testified that he and his uncle Kerry had been talking to Nipsey when Eric walked up. He said he heard the gunshots and then saw Nipsey fall. He started to run. He told the jury that after Nipsey fell to the ground, Nipsey said, "He shot me. He shot me." He described feeling something hit his belt buckle and then noticed bleeding on his torso. He declined to seek medical treatment, however. He said he never heard Eric say anything prior to shooting, and he had no idea that anyone was in danger leading up to it. A man named Christian Johnson was inside the Master Burger at the same time as Eric Holder Jr. He told the court that he was a fan of Nipsey's and saw him talking to people outside. While he was there, he heard multiple gunshots and heard people running. He ducked under a table. He then went outside and saw Nipsey on the ground. He got very emotional on the stand. Brianita Nicholson was the state's star witness. She testified about how she met Eric and about how they went to the strip mall parking lot together on March 31st, 2019. She described seeing Nipsey Hussle in the parking lot and going to take a picture with him when she saw Eric walk over to the group. She said when Eric came back to the car, he told her to drive around the block, which she did. She noticed he had a gun on him, and she told him that he wasn't going to shoot at anyone from her car, which Eric laughed off before putting the gun away. When they came back around to the strip mall, he told her to pull in the back. She did. As they sat there, parked in the alley, he started to eat his sandwich and then told her to wait there while he got out of the car. Minutes later, she heard gunshots. She said she was afraid and then saw a man running. She pulled her car into the street but didn't leave. She then saw Eric power walking back to the car. She asked him what had happened, and he told her she talks too much and that he should slap her. His voice was stern, and he loudly told her to drive. They drove away, and it was quiet in the car. He wasn't responding, and she said she didn't want to get him upset. She agreed she had told the grand jury that she saw him getting into the car with 2 guns, but now she said she didn't see the guns right away. But after they started driving, she said she saw a revolver and a semi-automatic. She dropped Eric off at his cousin's house, and then she went home. She didn't hear about Nipsey getting shot until later that night. Under her social media post with the photo of her and Nipsey taken that day, she saw comments that said Eric was the shooter. She said she was sad that they were saying that, but she wasn't sure it was true. Eric called her later that night and asked her to come pick him up and asked if he could come over. She said yes. She brought him over to her mom's place to sleep. She said she asked him what happened, but he ignored her. She said she showed him what people were saying about him in the comments of her photo, and he had no response. The next morning, she had to go to work. She asked him if he was ready to go home, and he said he couldn't, that his place was a mess. She used her ID to get him a room at a Motel 6 in Long Beach. She then left him there and went to her caregiver job. She was asked if she knew what happened to his guns, and she said no. While she was at her mom's house, she saw that her car was on the news, wanted in relation to the shooting. Her mom told her she should call the police. She went to the police station and spoke to someone at the front desk, who told her not to believe everything she sees on the news, and so she left. She went back a while later and finally met with a detective. She was interviewed for 5 hours, and she waived her rights. During the interrogation, they told her to call Eric, which she did. She asked him about his location. She said officers searched her phone, her car, her apartment, and her mom's place, all to which she consented. She was asked if she had an immunity agreement that was drawn up a few days prior to trial. She said yes. It said that nothing she said could be used against her unless she committed perjury. She said she was telling the truth. On cross, she was asked if she felt like the getaway driver, and she said no. She was asked if she thought Eric got mad when she said Nipsey was fine when they first pulled into the parking lot, and she said no. The defense attorney, Erin Jansen, pulled up her grand jury testimony, where she said she had witnessed tension from Nipsey when he was talking to Eric in the parking lot, and she was getting her photo taken with him. She had said she could tell Nipsey didn't want to talk to Eric and looked like he needed to go somewhere. Eric was talking to Nipsey kind of messy, she had said. She had said Eric asked Nipsey multiple times if he had ever snitched, and Nipsey brushed him off. Jansen also pointed out that she had said in her interview with detectives that she didn't hear an argument, but that Eric was being a bit aggressive. Then, under direct, she had said Eric was not being aggressive. Someone else who was there that day at the scene of the shooting was Evan Rimpau McKenzie. He had been subpoenaed to testify in court, but was a no-show. A warrant was put out for his arrest, but then was ultimately canceled. Officer Gilberto Gaxiola testified that he had worked for 17 years with the LAPD. He was a gang expert who specialized in the rolling 60s. He told the court that the gang has about 1,200 members, broken up into several different cliques. He testified that he has had many run-ins with Nipsey over the years, as well as with Eric. He estimated that he has met Nipsey about 50 times, and Eric about 10 times. He said he also knew Nipsey from both before and after he was famous. He testified that being called a snitch is one of the most serious insults to a gang member. On cross, he said he first encountered Eric as a teenager and wasn't sure when the last time he saw him was. He said he knows him to be a member of the Rolling 60s, that both he and Nipsey were self-admitted gang members. He was shown photos on cross of Nipsey throwing up gang signs when he was younger, and again when he was older. He was asked if he believed Nipsey was accusing Eric of being a snitch, and he said not necessarily. He was warning him that he should take care of it. Detective Cedric Washington was the lead detective in the case. He said in his opinion, Eric was armed with a gun when he walked into Master Burger. It was in his right front pocket. On cross, he was asked about the numerous witnesses who didn't want to testify, including Shermai and Carey. He said Brianita had received a telephone threat and had to come into court through a rear door. On day 7 of the trial, Eric wasn't in the courtroom when the day started. Rumors were soon confirmed. He had been assaulted by multiple individuals while in his holding cell. One of them used a razor blade. The jury was excused for the day. When court resumed, Eric was back at the defense table, but had swollen eyes and staples in the back of his head. Coroner Lawrence Wynn testified about Nipsey's injuries. He had 11 total gunshot wounds. Autopsy photos were shown to the jury. Bullets had hit his lungs, liver, colon, and severed his spinal cord. Wynn testified that Nipsey had a lot of internal bleeding and that a liter of blood was in his right lung that would have caused rapid death. After the coroner's testimony, the prosecution rested. When it was the defense's turn to present their case, they recalled Herman Douglas, aka Cowboy, to the stand. Surveillance video of the shooting was again shown to the jury. Eric's attorney, Aaron Jansen, pointed to another man who was standing near them in the video and asked Herman who that was. Herman didn't know. At some point, that man walked off screen. When asked if he ever heard Nipsey say the word snitch, Herman again said no. He was asked if he ever heard Eric say the word snitch. He said no. He was asked if Nipsey said, "Watch your back," and he said no. Jansen pulled up his grand jury testimony, where he said Nipsey did say to watch his back. He said Nipsey didn't really say that. That was just Herman characterizing the conversation. He agreed that he had also said during his grand jury testimony that the consequences of snitching could be getting hurt or killed. And he agreed that he saw Eric walk away after shaking Herman's and Rimpau's hands, but not Nipsey's. Then Eric went to the Master Burger. The defense also called a gang expert to the stand, who had previously been an LAPD officer from 1990 to 1992. His name was Robert Freeman, and he's now a private investigator. He testified that in the neighborhood where Nipsey and Eric grew up, snitching was a very serious offense, and everyone would know the consequences of it. He said especially if coming from a revered member, the accusation would be seen as almost gold as far as credibility. On cross, he conceded that the consequences are typically beatings and rarely killings. In his closing arguments, prosecutor John McKinney apologized for the graphic photos the jury saw the day prior when the coroner testified. He said he wouldn't be showing those today.
This is the photo that I want to show. Irving's Ascadon, a favorite son of a neighborhood in South Los Angeles. As a young man, he did join a gang. He was wayward in his ways. But over time, he changed. The streets he used to run as a young man became the life material that he used to become a voice for those same streets. And while some people get successful, they make money, they leave their neighborhoods, they change their address. This man was different. He wanted to change the neighborhood. He invested in the neighborhood. He kept the same friends from the neighborhood. And the neighborhood loved him. And they called him Neighborhood Nip.
He said Nipsey was a father, son, brother, and human being. He said he was accessible. He would show up to his businesses with no entourage, no security, no fanfare. He pointed out that there was another rival gang that operated just about a mile from the Rolling 60s, and that Nipsey's death actually brought them together.
And at the occasion of Nipsey Hussle's death, you see a coming together in respect for this man. And as the defense's own gang expert put it, everybody loved him. He transcended what it meant to be a Rolling 60. He transcended it, but he didn't reject it because he had that kind of loyalty in him. but he was no longer a gangbanger. He was a world-known recording artist and so much more.
He said it's a shame that Nipsey's life was so brutally and coldly taken from him in his own neighborhood by someone he considered a friend and had just shaken hands with. He told the jury there's a narrow issue before them. The cameras and witnesses show who did the killing, and there's no issue of self-defense.
The only issue that the defense has raised, the only sliver of argument that can be made, is that Nipsey Hussle did something to arouse a strong emotional response from Mr. Holder that was so provocative that it overtook and obscured his reason and judgment, and then he killed because of that.
He said Nipsey's murder was premeditated, as evidenced by his behavior with Brianita after the encounter.
But as she turned that block back on the Slauson, she saw him manipulating what she saw for the first time that day, the black semi-automatic handgun. It looked like he was putting bullets in the magazine. And she, alarmed that he was going to shoot either at her or out the car, she says, "You're not about to shoot from my car." And he just kind of shrugs it off and puts the gun away. He was already planning to kill Nipsey Hussle, ladies and gentlemen. That's planning. That's premeditation and deliberation. That's thinking about it before you do it.
He said Eric had been walking around initially with no shirt on, and when he went back to the car with Brianita, he put one on. It's because he wanted every element of surprise he could get, McKinney said. He said Eric wanted to shoot everyone standing there, which is why he had two guns. He wanted to take everyone out and didn't know what kind of resistance he would get. He told the jury that Eric ambushed this group of men and intended on killing them in cold blood. In his closing, Eric's attorney, Aaron Jansen, reiterated what he said in his opening statements, that Eric Holder Jr. did shoot Nipsey Hussle and accidentally shot Carrie Lathan and Shermai Villanueva. But he called it manslaughter and said Eric acted in the heat of passion.
We told you what that heat of passion that he acted on consisted of. It consisted of being called publicly a snitch by someone as famous as Nipsey Hussle.
He played part of an interview Herman Douglas gave to No Jumper, in which Herman said Nipsey made a comment as he saw Eric pulling up. I wonder how this is going to unfold.
So that statement by Nipsey Hussle shows that in his state of mind, he's already anticipating confrontation with Mr. Holder Jr. I wonder how this is going to unfold. Why would you say something like that? Unless in your mind, you're thinking, I'm going to bring up that I heard that he was snitching. I wonder how this is going to unfold. He already had a confrontational state of mind when Mr. Holder just drove up.
He said Eric, however, had an innocent state of mind.
He was just hanging out, living his life in Long Beach, coming over to the neighborhood to get some fries, some chili cheese fries. He knows that he's not in the gang anymore. I'm sure he sees them and he's thinking, okay, I'm not in the gang anymore, I'm not active, but I'm not going to snub them. I'm going to go over and say what's up while my food is getting ready. And that's exactly what he does. No animosity or anything like that.
He told the jury that telling someone that they have paperwork on them is even worse than calling them a snitch.
You know, they're doing wordplay when they get on the witness stand, but having paperwork on you, both experts have said that that is calling you a snitch. In fact, both experts testified that telling someone that they have paperwork on you is worse than being called a snitch. Because if they have paperwork on you, they have documentation that you're a snitch. It's not just a rumor. There's actually documentation showing that you've been snitching. So that's actually worse by saying they have paperwork on you. So Eric's state of mind is thinking, what's going on? You know, I'm in this group. I'm surrounded by these guys who are rolling 60s. I grew up with them in the neighborhood, and now Nipsey Hussle is outing me as a snitch.
He said Nipsey would have known it was a serious accusation against Eric, with serious consequences, especially in light of the fact that Eric hadn't been in the neighborhood in years.
Both experts told you that that would be suspicious. If you're not in the neighborhood for years and then someone accuses you of being a snitch and having paperwork, then it kind of seems like, okay, that's why you haven't been around for years, right? You've been ducking out. You don't want anyone to retaliate against you. You've been hiding out. You know you've been snitching. That's why you haven't been coming around.
He said Herman Douglas has credibility problems in this case. He pointed out that only 2 people testified about the conversation between Nipsey and Eric, Herman and Brianita.
According to Mr. Douglas, who's a registered sex offender for felony sexual assault and is currently on felony probation for car theft out of the airport court, mainly his credibility problem is that he blames himself. But at the same time, he doesn't want other people to blame him for not protecting Nipsey. So he's locked into this ridiculous narrative that there was no hint of any animosity, irritation involved in this conversation, that everything was just lovely, it's just homeboys chopping it up, and everything was fine. Otherwise, he would have escorted Mr. Holder off the premises to protect the talent, as he put it. He even goes so far to say that retaliation for snitching is something that happened in the 80s and 90s, when both gang experts said that's not true. It still happens.
He said Herman even acknowledged that retaliation for snitching still happens in an Instagram video.
But even in his own Instagram video, he says, where I come from, snitches don't last. That's not in the 80s or 90s. That was June 2nd of 2022. He said, Nipsey never called Eric a snitch. We know that's not true. We know that's just wordplay. He didn't say the word snitch, but he said they have paperwork on you. That's just another way of saying the same thing.
He said Herman also said he never heard Eric use the word snitch, but Brianita said otherwise. He told the jury the standard for a criminal case is beyond a reasonable doubt, and that the state didn't prove first-degree willful premeditated murder. The jury, however, disagreed. After about 6 hours of deliberations, they found Eric Holder Jr. guilty of first-degree murder in the death of Nipsey Hussle. They did, however, find him guilty of 2 counts of attempted voluntary manslaughter instead of the 2 attempted murder counts prosecutors had sought for the other 2 victims. He was sentenced to 60 years to life in prison. And that's all for this episode. As always, I'd love to know what you think about this case. Let me know on Instagram at CourtJunkie, on Twitter at CourtJunkiePod, or you can email me at podcast@CourtJunkie.com. To hear these episodes without the ads, hear additional Court Junkie bonus episodes, or to get our weekly newsletter about interesting court cases, check out my Patreon options at CourtJunkie.com/support. And be sure to check out our sister podcast, Civil, about some of the most fascinating trials making their way through the civil courts. Just search for Civil on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.